Hello, and welcome to everyone who's joined this interview, which is part of the Cambridge Judge Business School video series, CJBS Perspectives, Leadership in Unprecedented Times. By way of introduction, I am Simon Taylor, a management practice professor of finance and director of the Global EMBA at Cambridge Judge Business School. And I'm delighted and honored today to be joined by Hedwige Nuyens, who's the Managing Director of the International Banking Federation and the Chair of European Women on Boards. So Hedwige, thank you so much for joining us today. Perhaps by way of a start, you could tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and about your remarkable career to date.
With pleasure, Simon. And so thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and to have this conversation with you. So indeed, I was born in a small university town, another university in Louvain in Belgium, French speaking, but in the Dutch part, as we have complicated situations in Belgium. I managed to do very nice studies. So I was a lawyer, I am a lawyer, but I was born in a family where actually they wanted a son. And so there was a very big disappointment to have girl after girl, and my father ended up with 7 girls. So you can imagine, I was born with no expectation at all. And that was one of the promises I made to myself when I was a very little girl. If one day I will have something to say or a position of influence, I'm going to try to do something for girls.
Wow, that's impressive. I have 2 daughters. I can't imagine what it's like to have 7, but that's remarkable. So I guess that helps to explain then why you've been a long-standing champion of gender diversity. So I wonder, perhaps going back to the start of your own career, what were the barriers that women faced then? And in particular, when they were trying to achieve the senior and board level positions in the finance sector?
Yes, so that's a very good question, because actually, as long as I was at the university, I didn't face any difference. And in fact, it was the opposite, because I studied very well. I had high grades. And in fact, the majority in my class were women, or a big majority. And when I first started in a bank, I thought that there would be no difference. That was my the real thought I had. And it was only when, after a few years in this first position in a bank, that I noticed that my fellow male colleagues were getting a promotion and I didn't. And I knew I was working hard and I knew I had those qualifications, but I started to wonder, what do they have that I don't have? And that is when I started to think, how can I learn from them? What is it that I miss? And my big first lesson was that you can be as intelligent as you want, as you can work as hard as you can. If you want to make a career in a traditional banking sector, and it's true for many other industries, you need to be visible, you need to network, you need to be known by people, and also let other people know what you want, what you can bring to the table. And so very late in my career, I started to actually notice why it was important to network. And very shortly after, I decided it was time for me to help other women to get that same insight. So I didn't have any role model myself, but as soon as I found out how I could make it and be rewarded equally, I thought perhaps there is a learning point that I can share with others. And so very soon in my career, I started to work, to mentor, to just rally with other women and to see how we can be stronger together.
And do you think that then that role models are a really important part of this, that women need to see, so to speak, how to do it? They need to see from or learn from other women how to get ahead and get these senior positions?
Yes, I think so. So I never had a role model myself. I always replaced men, actually. Yeah. So when I was promoted to the next level, it was mostly because I replaced a man. And actually, it's not about starting to copy what men have been doing all the way long. It's about trying to understand the system, try to make it easier for ourselves with our added value and the hard work and what we can contribute to take on positions of more responsibility. And actually, by doing it our way, but understanding how you can do it more easily, to then change the system itself. So it's very much give and take. And for me, it was very important to understand how you can influence decision-making, how you can help others to understand what you can bring to the next level, that it actually was much more easy for me. And then I used every single opportunity as a manager, as a CEO, to help others and actually to have a better reward and a better system of really valuing all talent. And that is something that I still do today.
And how much progress have we made? Where do you see things today compared with when you first began trying to make progress for women?
So it gradually improved. So when I started in my bank, in the first bank, I was one of the first women who had that position. But the problem is that every stage you move on. So every stage, every promotion that I did, actually you meet again fewer women. So that's why I said I am part of the change. So I move along the ladder. Now I'm the CEO of the International Banking Federation. So I represent the banking industry worldwide. And that's why now in the position I am both in the banking industry and in my role as chair of European Women on Boards, I very much advocate and promote gender equality amongst other diversity at each level. And even though we have 50-50 at entry level, we have approximately 30-40% at mid-management level. At the level of boards and the executive suite, we are not there yet. There are huge differences amongst countries, of course, but we are not there yet. And I am one of those with many who try to change that. And our goal is certainly to have an equal representation of women at each level of companies. And now I'm focusing on the top level, C-suite and board level.
I had a conversation the other day with a senior academic colleague who's a woman, and in our subject, which is economics, women are definitely underrepresented at that senior level. And she is a role model, but there is this almost perverse or unfair additional pressure that she's constantly being asked to take on positions of diversity or representation for women, which means she has less time to do the normal job of research, which is how you actually get promoted. And I wonder, is this a problem in banks as well?
Yes, of course, because the more you advance, the higher you are in terms of the hierarchy, the lesser women you have. But the way I approach this is, it's not about me. So it's not about me being alone. My big power has been to create a network already 15 years ago, a network of both female and male allies. And that has a big advantage because, of course, I'm very often asked to be a speaker or to be this or to be that. And I have to be precious of my time. But if I can't do it, I will use the opportunity to nominate somebody else. So my golden rule is to have sufficient women in my network that whenever I get the opportunity to have a woman nominated or appointed, I can actually recommend 3 others. And that means that I'm a levy, I'm a multiplier. And so it's not about saying, oh, what a pity that I get all those demands. No, it's great because perhaps I've been more visible so far, but I can pass this on to others. So I would say use this kind of publicity and knowledge and image, not to be burnout yourself, but to try to multiply and to put other women. And that's also something which is very female. Whenever I'm CEO or I'm a chair, my job is to have 2, 3, 10 other people who can do the job also, who can also be representing the organization and speak on behalf and carry the message.
Thank you. I wonder if we could talk about the Women on Boards Directive, which was just adopted at the end of last year by the EU after, I believe, 10 years from when it was first put forward. Perhaps for those who aren't familiar with this, you could say a little about what the goals of the directive are and what role European women on boards played in it, and also why it took so long.
Yes, that's an unbelievable story. You know that the European Commission for years have been advocating gender equality and have been supporting a gender equality strategy. And that directive saying that we should have at least 40% women in boards is something that was voted by the parliament in 2012 and 2013. And then it was blocked. It was blocked at the level of states. Notably, Germany was against, Denmark, the Netherlands, Sweden, Poland, Hungary, actually quite a lot of states who were saying a little bit like you hear sometimes in the UK, well, you shouldn't have regulation. It should be something that companies go for. We should not regulate this at European level. So that was the argument used by those states. And when I became the chair of European Women on Boards, it was one of the first things I tried to do again, to relaunch a lobbying and a political campaign together with the president of the European Commission, the French presidency, and use all the tricks that I actually have built and known from my banking career, how to create a kind of allyship, a sounding board. And we managed to change course against all odds. Nobody thought it was possible after 10 years. This directive was voted. And what it says is that by mid-2026, so in little less than 4 years, every board of every stock listed company in the 27 countries of the European Union will need to have at least 40% women. And it's not about just nominating women. The very intelligent thing in the directive is that you need transparent selection procedures. You need to have an objective of your own as company, and you need to explain why the person you nominate is the best candidate. And actually, the very nice trick is that you can still nominate a man, no problem. But if you nominate a male board member while you don't have the 40%, you need to explain why this man is the best and only candidate. So it really also avoids the trick of the quota where women don't want to be nominated because they are women. They are actually reversing this. You can nominate a candidate, but if it's a man and you don't have 40%, you should explain why there was no other woman and why this man is the best candidate.
I see. That's very interesting. So what practical steps do we need to get more women into senior roles, particularly at board level? And what can women themselves do to get those positions?
That's a very good question. And when I became the chair of European Women on Boards, we actually discussed and brainstormed with the other board members what we could do to really make this happen, because in practice, we need to double the numbers in 5 years. And so we decided to have a strategy where we really use every levy of change. And the first is indeed what women can do themselves. And so our first objective is to create a talent pool of 1,000 women saying, I'm ready, I'm eager to take on those positions, not only board, but also C-level. So we take it one step before. The second is politics, as you rightfully mentioned. We have the directive, we're going to implement it. Third is to take into account the cultural differences. This is something which is extremely important in Europe, and that's why we decided to roll out our organization in every single country in Europe, to really have the local knowledge, the local networks to help us. And last but not least, we want to engage the dialogue with companies. So we reach out to companies to see how can we help. Do you need nominations? Do you need talent? We reach out to executive search firms, and we are looking to have as many male allies as we can. This is so important because it's not just a women's organization. It's not just a women's issue. This is something where we say that using all talent is actually the right thing to do and will actually help to have much better performing companies.
You mentioned cultural differences, and I wonder if you could say a bit more about that, because I could imagine that being used as an excuse in some cases to say, oh, well, we're different, so we should not have to meet this target, or we should meet it in a different way. What do those cultural differences mean in practice?
So cultural difference is it's something that we really see in the figures, because when we look at what happened all those years that the directive was blocked, in practice, some countries put in regulation and had some national initiatives. And so a lot of countries are already at 40%, whereas countries where nothing happened are under 20 or even under 10%. So basically the agreement at local level that it is a good thing to have regulation has actually meant a lot in practice. And so if you want to reverse this, if now we will have national regulation in every country, you need to balance a fine line between saying you have to do it, but also try to see how you can still do it in the best possible way and try to understand what is underlying, what might block, what might be the blocking factor. Try to understand this, whether it is we think there are no women, women don't want it. So try to understand the arguments, and you can only have the best way if you have locals, if you have people from the country, both men and women. That's why we work together with organizations, with local lawyers, local law firms, politicians. We engage discussions with trade unions to really try to see what are potential blocking factors. And then we have a whole lot of accompanying measures that we can propose to make it more easy. And one of them is, of course, to say, well, we work together with you, and it's about creating the pipeline and the best possible talent pipeline that will actually make your firm perform better.
I wonder if you have any particular advice to men who want to support this whole process, but who sometimes feel, let's say, awkward or nervous about getting involved for fear that they appear to be trying to take over or that they're getting in the way. I think men sometimes aren't quite sure how to respond to initiatives like this, but many of them, I think, genuinely want to support it. So how should they think about the best way to be useful?
That's a very good point, actually. And that's also why in our organization, European Women on Boards, we have actually male allies at every single step. When I was doing the advocacy at the level of the European Commission, I was not alone. I was with a male board member, Nelson, my colleague, and we were both there. And so it is very powerful when a man is explaining why it is so important to have diversity at every level of the organization, why it's important to have representation at each level of the organization. What we also do is we embed this discussion in a much broader discussion of diversity. And so when we speak about having women at every level, we say it's not only about women, it's about all women. And in our talent pool of 1,000 women, we make sure that we have at least 20% coming from underrepresented groups. And that's a much wider discussion. Underrepresented groups, so also countries where you have nearly no women on boards, women of color, women with a different education background. And so in my board, I have an objective to have at least 40% men, and I will be there at the end of the year. So 4 out of 10 board members will be men. And it's men speaking in events, in videos, explaining why they believe that it's much better for society, much better for corporates to, it sounds basic, but really to use all talent. And no, I wouldn't say it's awkward. It's just very good practice that you have CEOs, that you have chair of boards explaining why they want to be relevant, why they want to have the best possible talent, and why diversity is actually a very good thing.
What other key challenges do you see in the financial sector that need to be addressed with the same urgency as gender fairness? So finance has been traditionally a very conservative environment. You know that industry, it's an industry way of people who have been there forever. Also in boards, it was very much a question of people who knew each other. That's something that was very much ingrained in the culture. And then came the financial crisis and came increased supervision. And now I can say that the banking sector is at the forefront. So especially at the European side, but I also hear it from UK supervisors, there is a clear wish and a push from regulators and supervisors to see diversity in boards. And we know that in the banking industry, you cannot just nominate a board director or a chief risk officer or CEO unless he or she has been vetted by the supervisor. So actually in the banking industry,
it's reversed, it's going faster, and now there is much more scrutiny by external auditors and supervisors to make sure that the board is really as diverse and is the best possible skilled board possible to really challenge and to make sure that risks are well monitored. So I would say that where finance was a laggard, now they are very much at the forefront, and there is a clear push to have much more variety in question of nationality, origin, gender, and especially also diversity of skills.
Well, as someone who used to work in the banking industry, I'm pleased to hear that it's no longer a laggard. Perhaps finally, do you have any additional words of wisdom for people just starting out on a career in the financial sector?
So I think that working in the financial sector is still a very nice opportunity. You have, of course, heard about also the beauty of fintech and big tech, and the banking sector will still evolve a lot. So I still think it's a very nice opportunity for young men and women to start with. And I would say to all young, talented women in this room, but also to all the young men who are willing to see how is the financial sector evolving, I would certainly not hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to me or reach out to colleagues to see what it means for you and how you can have a nice career in banking. When I started, you would start in a bank and retire there. I'm an example that it hasn't to be like that. And of course, nobody would say that you have to stay in just one single firm. And to all young talented women, please reach out if you want to see why networking is important. And to the young men, most of the time you don't have to say it, but it's so important to be part of an alumni network like the one in Cambridge. Don't stay alone. You know the power of social media, but it's really very useful in a professional career as well.
Hedwige, thank you very much. That's a really, really wonderfully inspiring and fascinating conversation. Thank you for talking to me. And on behalf of everyone at Cambridge Judge Business School, thank you for taking part in our series CJBS Perspectives, Leadership in Unprecedented Times. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.